Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the New York iMapInvasives monthly webinar series, and today's topic is prepping for field season with iMapInvasives. So we'll be talking about setting up data collection tools, creating reports, getting species lists, and setting up email alerts. So my name is Mitchell O'Neill. I'm the End User Support Specialist for the New York Natural Heritage Program. And we'll also have some guest speakers from the PRISMs. So we'll have Nicole Campbell, the Terrestrial Invasive Species Coordinator from the Capital Region PRISM, Megan Harris, the Aquatic Invasive Species Program Coordinator from Finger Lakes PRISM, and Brittany Rogers, the Aquatic Restoration and Resiliency Coordinator from SLELO PRISM. And that's who we are, and you can feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box. Just your name, your organization, or your town, and if you use iMap, what do you primarily use it for? And so I work for the New York Natural Heritage Program. Our mission is to facilitate conservation of New York's biodiversity by providing comprehensive information and scientific expertise on rare species and natural ecosystems. So we do a lot of rare species work. We are a partnership between New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and SUNY ESF. You can learn more by going to the new website, mihp.org. Another component of the New York Natural Heritage Program is the Invasive Species Database Program, and that's where I work. So we mainly administrate iMapInvasives, but we also work on other projects, including the Watercraft Inspection Steward program application and creating models to help managers prioritize management. And so today, I'll give a brief introduction, and then we'll hear from Brittany Rogers from SLELO on how SLELO uses the variety of data collection tools that we offer to get data into iMap. And then I will offer some tips on some of those tools. So the first half of the webinar will be focused more on data collection and the apps that we offer. And then the second part of the webinar is going to be focused more on the online stuff, so using the online interface. So I'll give a couple quick tips, and then we'll hear from Nicole Campbell from Capital Region PRISM on how she uses the email alerts. And then I'll give a brief tutorial of how to set up an email alert. And then we'll hear from Megan Harris from Finger Lakes PRISM on how she has used the report tool in iMapInvasives, and then I'll give a brief demo of how to use that report tool. And so the goal today is to empower the attendees to leverage iMapInvasives in 2021, so this upcoming field season, and also to learn about some of the more advanced functionalities within iMap and how they can be used at this point in the field season. So here's my two-slide introduction. So iMapInvasives is a system that's used by several jurisdictions across North America. In New York State, it's the Centralized Invasive Species Database to support PRISMs, state agencies, and other partners working on invasive species issues. So you can report invasive species observations to iMapInvasives. You can create distribution maps, run reports, track distributions. You can set up early detection alerts. Our data are available as a web map service for use in GIS applications, and you can track control efforts and results. And since I have mentioned the PRISM so many times so far, I wanted to at least define what they are for anyone who's not familiar. So it stands for Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. New York State is divided into 8 of these partnerships, and they do a wide variety of invasive species work across the state. So they coordinate management, they run prevention programs, they do surveillance and mapping, habitat restoration, early detection, rapid response. They engage with local groups and coordinate volunteer efforts, and much more. So if you're not already connected to your PRISM, I encourage you to do so. And here's a map of the PRISMs, and today we'll hear from Brittany from SLELO, Nicole from the Capital Region, and Megan Harris from the Finger Lakes region. And so our first guest speaker is Brittany Rogers from the St. Lawrence and Eastern Lake Ontario PRISM.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in today. I am invited to participate in today's webinar because I'm one of the few people who just love to brag about the tools and the amazing resources that iMapInvasives can provide for all of us.
And I remembered that I was going to give a brief overview of the different tools to give some context for your talk, so I'll do that really quick. We have some tools that are available to everyone. The main two that have been around for a while are the iMap mobile app, which is good for simple point data, collecting data fast, the most important fields to fill out, and you can do presence or not detected. So this is kind of the simplest data collection tool. And then there's also iMapInvasives Online. So you can do simple data collection, but you can also do complex data collection. You can do treatments, not detected, et cetera. But this does require connectivity. So sometimes it works out in the field, but if you're out somewhere remote, it might not work. One thing that we came out with recently was the iMapInvasives Survey 123. Which allows for more advanced data collection, so all data types, presence not detected, treatments, polygons, lines, beyond just the mobile app. So it kind of brings all of the capability of the iMap Online, but into an app that's functional without connectivity. And so those are the three tools that are available to anyone who's doing invasive species work or volunteering in New York State. But if you are staff for a PRISM or an agency, we do have some other more advanced options. They typically require information of geographic information systems, and they often require you to review data in ArcGIS Online. So for these reasons, these are not as widely available, but they are an option for our professional crowd. So very briefly, we have iMap Mobile Advanced, which is designed for all data types, particularly with treatments in mind. And this is a map-based collaborative app, so you can go out with a team and all attach records to the same searched area. We also have the Forest Pest Survey, which has some extra fields for forest pests like hemlock woolly adelgid. And we have SAS Pro, which you can do presence not detected, polygons, and it's specifically designed for aquatic surveys, in particular rake tosses. And one key feature is that you can record information on native plants that you find present. And so SLELO utilizes almost all of these tools. So Brittany is going to talk a little bit about how SLELO does that. And I'll just do that after. So go ahead, Brittany.
Thank you, Mitch. Sorry about that.
No, my fault.
Yeah, so let me just get my video going really quick here. Okay, so as Mitch said in his introduction, I'm with the St. Lawrence Eastern Lake Ontario Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. And I actually work along the Eastern Lake Ontario shoreline and up into the St. Lawrence. And then we actually share borders with the Finger Lakes PRISM, Capital Region PRISM, and also the Adirondacks. So if you can hit next for me. So I have my contact information on here. If any of you live or are working in the SLELO region and we haven't connected in the past, please feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about any of the tools that we've used, or if you just want someone to help you get started using some of these tools to help you move forward. Next slide, please. So similar to the other PRISMs, we have some core programming that we do, including prevention, early detection, rapid response, management and control, and then of course, education and outreach. And so on top of all of that, we also do a bunch of different special initiatives or special projects that are important to our stakeholders, but also the SLELO region in general. So I'm involved in most of the aquatic ones, and then we have a terrestrial coordinator and an education and outreach coordinator who participate in the other projects. If you hit next, please. Here in bold, on the left-hand side, you can see that some of the projects that we are working on, or most of them, are actually using or utilizing the tools that have been created by the iMapInvasives staff. These have been really beneficial to us, and then if there are places where we find small gaps for example, with our environmental DNA sampling or eDNA sampling, we created our own tools, but then we're also uploading that same information or utilizing the same information from iMap just to try to really get everything standardized and brought together so it's all in one place. Next slide. So as Mitch mentioned, there's a couple different ways that people are currently participating in iMapInvasives, maybe not necessarily in the full extent that I'll be sharing about, but I really did want to highlight how important all of our volunteer observations and the participation from those who aren't working full-time to manage invasive species and how important that really is to us. So in the last couple of years of the iMap 3 update, there's that new online interface where you can actually really see on the maps and create the searched areas and observations, presence records, and really detailed information of the invasive species. So these new and stronger observations are becoming more beneficial to us because we're able to better respond and have an understanding of something before we actually get to it. If you hit next for me, I apologize, I used a lot of animations in my slides, so you can hit next a lot. And then, of course, the traditional app that's by iMapInvasives. I mean, I still use this too. When I'm out hiking or doing my own stuff, I'll use this. But, you know, this is the quick and dirty way to just say, hey, I found this, snap a picture and report that. If you hit next, please. The cool thing is that now there's that third way that Mitch was talking about. So really harnessing the power of like location and better information, more in-depth information about these invasives is great because we actually respond to a lot of those species that are reported either first time in a county or first time in a region. Even if it's first time in SLELO, we respond to those. So by people who are using either the online interface or this new Survey 123 app or form, and collecting more information for us, it helps us be more prepared so that when we go out in the field, we're not searching for a couple hours to try to find something and we have more accurate information. So all of these things have been really great building up into the iMapInvasives world. Of course, there's a lot of other ways that we use it, but I'm not going to talk about that. So if you go to the next slide, we use the Forest Pest app for our hemlock woolly adelgid surveys. And this has been really awesome because we've been able to collect really strong information, not only about hemlock woolly adelgid, which previously up until about 3 weeks ago was not known to be in our region. We did find our first infestation, but we've been using this app that benefits not only our program, but it also benefits the New York Natural Heritage Program staff, iMapInvasives staff, of course, state staff, and also the New York State Hemlock Initiative. So with this tool, you can collect information on the hemlock stands or the forest that you're working in, on the characteristics, if you've been doing treatments, and you can create polygons or big areas so you can see while you're out there how much you're actually surveying or where you are. It's really nice when you have connectivity because then you can actually track yourself while you're moving around and have really good maps. But then also, one of the things I love about this tool is that there's an opportunity to take a lot of photos and attach photos to your surveys. So the map up here is not actually connected to where these images were taken, but you can see on the map created polygons for searched areas or like shapes where we searched. And then also in those surveys, you can attach photos to say up close of infestation, the size of the trees or the forest that you're working in. So I always appreciate that. If you want to go to the next slide, please. Oh, hit next one more time. Yeah, there you go. Also there's another app called SAS Pro, or Simple Aquatic Survey for Professionals. This was developed to actually do field surveys out on the water. You can do riparian surveys as well. So if you're kayaking or canoeing, you can report invasive species that are along the shorelines. One of the cool things about this tool is not only when we're doing rake tosses in SLELO, we're collecting all the invasives that we're finding, but we're also collecting information on all the natives too and tracking all of that within the same tool. Last year, we initiated our aquatic restoration initiative. It was the first phase, and basically the map you see here is we had a subcontractor who went out and conducted break tosses. He put out traps to collect fish and minnows, or even we were really targeting rusty crayfish, gobies, things like that. And then also you can do plankton tows. And so you can record all of that information right in this survey. And then, of course, you know, you see these awesome maps that you get out of it, so you can get a really good understanding of that information. One of the cool things, again, is you're able to attach an image of every species that you're collecting or surveying using SAS Pro. So there's a really good benefit there. But then also, there's other information that you're recording, including depth of the water, clarity, and just some other like water related questions, including the substrate and where you're doing your rake tosses. So that's been really beneficial. We use that for our early detection surveys, and our subcontractors are required to use that. And next slide. Oh, there's just a picture that was attached to one of the surveys. And so the online version of some of these tools are pretty nice because you can really get access to pretty much everything that you've collected. And, you know, the biggest learning curve is how to use this technology, and then also how to really get through and use it to the best of your ability. So there's so much that this technology can do for us to benefit our work. So this is for the iMap Mobile Advanced Survey, and as you can see in the map on the top portion of the slide, there's a lot of programs that are using this. If you want to hit next, Mitch. And this can be used for multiple different things, creating search areas where you're actually going out and looking for invasives. This map here is zoomed really far out. It's actually of Chameau Barrens, which is up in northern New York. It's a really important ecosystem, and there's a lot of rare and protected species in this region. So we prioritize a lot of invasive species work there. But you can create surveys, search areas where you're surveying. You can create detected or not detected areas. And then also we have our contractors who do our herbicide applications are actually also required to use this as well. So everything is in one place. You can see it. We can access all of our surveys, our treatments, all of that data all together. So again, you know, it's just a matter of learning how to use the tool, but it's really powerful when you start bringing all that information in. And that is it from me. So thank you so much, Mitch. And if anyone wants to ask questions or has anything you'd like to ask, I'll put my information in the chat box. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Brittany. That was really great to hear how you're using all these different tools in SLELO. I wanted to mention, so we just went through a bunch of apps very quickly. If you want to learn more about the different capabilities of each of the apps, you can go to nyimappinvasives.org/report-an-invasive, and we have this table on that page. So it kind of goes through all the different functionalities and limitations of each app. Again, I will emphasize that, so these first three apps, those are available to everyone. These more advanced apps on the right, so this is getting into the more advanced technology Brittany was alluding to. These are an option for you if you are mostly for people who are PRISM staff or agency staff. And if you want to learn more about these ones, the more advanced ones, you can email us, and my email will be up. We have online resources for getting trained up on these tools that are available to everyone. So I wanted to just give a couple of quick tips for our apps. So I'm going to start with the iMap mobile app. Some quick tips that would be good to think about now to make your life easier in the middle of field season and make data collection smoother. So many of you may be opening the app for the first time in a few months. You might get a notification to retrieve your iMap lists. And that essentially sort of logs in your app so that when you upload records, they will be associated with your online account. And I want to mention that sometimes people experience error messages here. So one would be if you have mistyped your username password, maybe you changed your password since you last logged into iMap. So just make sure you type carefully. There's another error you might experience where it says that there's an issue getting your person ID. And if you get that, just wait about 5 seconds and then click Retrieve iMap Lists again. And then it should go through for you. And some more tips I have are to create a custom species list. So if you go into Preferences in the app, there's a button that says Customize Species List. And so if you click on that, it'll bring up the list of hundreds and hundreds of invasive species to scroll through. And if you go through and select maybe 10, maybe 20, or maybe even just 5 species that you are interested in, that you want to report, that will save you time in the field. So when you collect data in the field, it will just be a short list of species you're interested in, and you won't have to spend too much time scrolling. I'd recommend also selecting fake species in that list. We recently renamed it to a fake species, so it pops up first in the species list now, if you are looking for it. Also, in the preferences in your mobile app, you can set default organizations and projects. So if you are part of an organization or project, which I will talk a little bit about later, you can set defaults there so you don't have to select them every time you create a record. And my last tip would be to practice submitting a fake species record, uploading it from the app, and then check it online, just to make sure you understand the full process and you're all ready to go. On our website at nyimapinvasives.org/training, there's a link to our YouTube channel where we have a very quick 4-part playlist on how to go through all of those steps. So I encourage you to utilize that if you need some guidance on your own time. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to mention is that there is an update planned for the app around April 30th, so keep an eye out for that. We will be adding some functionality where you can create records from photos you've previously taken, and it will take the geographic coordinates from those photos. And we will also be resolving that bug where you get the error that says problem obtaining iMap person ID. So keep an eye out for that in late April, early May. And then briefly, some tips for the more advanced tools. For any of the tools that utilize Survey 123, for example, the iMapInvasives Survey 123 by NatureServe, there's a very useful function called favorites. So for the data fields that will be the same every time you report a record, so your name, your person ID, your organization perhaps, you can save all those answers so you don't have to type them every time by setting them as favorites. And there's actually a little trick where you have to cancel out the record and save it into drafts for this to work. And we do go through that on the help doc for the Survey 123 forum on our website in the training tab. And for the advanced survey tools, IMA, SAS Pro, and the Forest Pest Survey, if you're interested in starting using one of those tools this season, you can email us for more information. And just note that we are discussing plans to conduct trainings for IMA and SAS Pro, but there's no dates yet, so that's to be determined at this point. And so at this point, we can shift over to the online world. I'm going to start with a handful of tips on here, and then we're going to hear from the rest of our guest speakers. So I'm going to switch over to the online website and show you some things that would be useful to know going into field season. So how to check on your account and some general tips for navigating the interface. So for those of you new to iMap, you can access the database by going to nyimapinvasives.org. We have a lot of resources here. But the thing I'm going to talk about now is getting to the online database. So you click Login at the top right. And if you already have an account, you can enter your information. If not, you can set an account up. You just put in your name, email. For jurisdiction, that's the state or province you're living in. So most people on this call would select New York here. And when you sign up, just make sure you check your email for the activation link. Sometimes that goes into the spam or junk folder. So you just have to open that up and follow the link where you'll read through the user agreement and then activate your account. And once your account's active, then you'll be able to use the sign up here. So I just put my username and password in, and I have it preloaded. So it brings you to a page that looks like this. There's always a pop-up for the recent updates. So I'll X out that for now. And so you're brought to this map. At the top left, there's a main menu, which I will go through in a second. And then there's some navigation tools on the left-hand side. Like you can zoom in and out, you can enter an address. And then on the top are some action tools. So you can create records, you can filter which records you're seeing. I'll talk about the export report tool later. And then on the right-hand side are the layers. So there's the base maps, and very importantly, there's this layers on off. So this is where you control what data you're seeing. So by default, it just shows you the confirmed and unconfirmed present species hexes, but you can also toggle on other layers. But before getting into any of that, I'm going to show you how you can check on your account. So in the main menu at the top left, you select your account, and it brings you to a page like this. So at the top is your basic information, your email, and then it has your projects and organizations below. So if you got a new email or something, you can change it by going to Edit and putting in your new email. I just want to warn you that it will bump you out once you do that, and then you'll have to go into your new email address and then reactivate your account. But that's how you switch emails if you need to. And then one thing to pay attention to are the projects and organizations. So for most of our users, if you are a volunteer, for example, you probably don't need to have an organization. For people who are working for an employer and to do invasive species surveys, so if you're doing invasive species work as a part of your job, you likely do need to join an organization. So for those of you for whom that's the case, one thing to check is, do you have your primary organization set? Are you even part of the organization? So the way you could check that would be to see if it's in your organization box, and the way to add it, if it's not, is to do, you go to the top right, you click Edit, you scroll down to Organizations, and if you click this Request to Join Organization button, it brings up a text box where you can type in an organization. I'll just join a test organization for now. So it'll pop up in that bar, and then you click Request to Join our organization, and then it appears and you are a pending member. And so once the admin for the organization reviews your request, they'll either make you a member or they'll remove your request. And make sure you save your changes when you're done. And if you're part of multiple organizations, make sure your primary organization is selected to the organization that makes the most sense for you. And again, for many of you, you don't need to worry about the organizations. And projects are another way that data is grouped in iMapInvasives. You can join projects, but you also don't need to join projects. So it's an option, but it's not necessary for most people. It's more if you're doing a volunteer effort for a PRISM or something and they tell you about a project you can join, then you can join that project. But otherwise, it's probably fine if it's blank. And then one thing to point out is that you can have confirming privileges in iMapInvasives. So under an organization, for example, you might see these icons for confirming privileges, and these are all X's, so this account does not have confirming privileges. If you are interested in helping us review records, maybe you have species identification experience and you want to be able to confirm records, you can email us to learn how you can make that happen. Yeah, so just email us for more information on that. But you definitely don't need to have these privileges. You can use iMap without confirming, like most of our users. All right, so that's everything in your account. I think next, I'll just show some basic things about going through the interface. So as I navigate on the map, I just want to point out that the URL in your browser is dynamic. So as I zoom in and out, the URL actually changes, and I'll explain why that's useful in a minute. But just something I wanted to note as I go in. So I'm going to use the search to zoom in to Albany. One thing that's useful is to change the base maps. So if you are creating records, maybe you would want the satellite map because it would give you a lot of information. For now, I'm just going to click a very plain base map just so it's easier to see what's going on through the screen share. And I'll point out again the layers on off. So you'll see now that I've zoomed in, those orange hexes had disappeared, and now it's green points. So these are the confirmed presences. So if you wanted to see unconfirmed or not detected, you would have to toggle those on. So the unconfirmed are pink, the not detected are a pale yellow. If you're having trouble seeing any of these records, you can adjust the transparency by clicking this little caret. So I'll make those not detected a more bold yellow. One feature that's often very useful is the filter tool. So maybe you don't want to see data for all invasives. Maybe you're interested in a particular group or a particular species. So for example, you can open this filter record. You could filter on your own records by doing this toggle, or you could filter on a species. So I'll do Tree of Heaven. And there are plenty of other things you can filter on as well, like dates and organizations. So I'll click Apply Filter, and the records will filter down to just the Tree of Heaven records. So now it's just Tree of Heaven records. One thing I'll mention but not go through is that you can create distribution maps. And those look like this. So you can, this is a distribution map of Tree of Heaven by local municipalities. So you can have it shade in for all of the municipalities where a Tree of Heaven is found. That's in the Add Distribution Layer section. And I think that's as far as I'll go into for the online interface now. And we can move on to hearing from some of our guest speakers. So first, Nicole Campbell from Capital Region PRISM is going to discuss how they use the email alert system for early detection and rapid response and monitoring in the Capital Region PRISM.
Thanks, Mitch. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk briefly about how we use our email alerts to assist with our site and survey prioritization for the field season. So the PRISMs utilize what we call a tier list, where invasive species are broken into 5 tiers based on presence in our region, abundance, and in the invasiveness ranking. So tier 1 is not yet in our PRISM. Tier 2 is just a couple populations, and it goes up with abundance to tier 4, which is our common widespread invasives, and tier 5 being the research or more information needed tier. So as far as alerts go, we utilize the email alerts for tier 1 and 2 specifically, as these are a priority in our PRISM to target for management in an attempt to reduce the presence and spread of the species before they're able to become abundant and widespread in our region. So I work specifically with terrestrial species, and we have an aquatics counterpart as well. And I actually set up a list of species in email alerts that fit into a few different categories, and I set up a few different groups for alerts. So the first alert you see here on the screen is one that I set up for a weekly email digest, where I entered in all of the species on our tier 1 terrestrial plant species list, and I set it to alert for any presence, confirmed or unconfirmed, within our PRISM boundary, which includes the 15-mile buffer surrounding the boundary. For tier 1 species, I did set it up to be notified of unconfirmed because these are the species that, if they are reported in our region, I specifically would want to look into this sighting immediately and check to see where it is or confirm it myself, as sometimes some of the species aren't confirmed right away by the experts in the state. So every Monday I'll get an email alert of all the species you see here on the screen, like down on the left. And if any are reported that week that'll fall under criteria for this alert, I can immediately review and prioritize surveys or management for the season for this species. The same sort of alert is set up but grouped together for tier 2 species with the same sort of parameters so that they'll come in separate email reports. And with these alerts, we can target management to find where these species are popping up the minute people report them, with the hopes of eradicating them and reducing the likelihood of spread from that location to others within the region. Could you go to the next slide, please? So the other type of alert we've set up is I actually have a county-based alert. For the capital region, we see a good majority of species moving north through the Hudson River corridor. So I've set up 2 specific alerts to address this area. The 2 counties, you can see our region is in blue right there. The 2 counties south on the southern border of our PRISM are Ulster and Dutchess County. So I've set up general terrestrial plant and animal alerts to come in weekly of all confirmed alerts for these 2 counties. This gives me the ability to scan through the confirmed reports to see what invasives are being reported in those 2 counties and to have a better sense of what's most reported and what may be encroaching on our PRISM region. When these emails come through, if there's a species of interest, I can pull up the record and look at the details to assess whether or not collaborative efforts need to be started or initiated to prevent the spread of the species between the boundaries. So these alerts are extremely useful in rapid response so that presence reports of invasives, it saves us the time basically to go to iMapInvasives and scan around and filter regions for the most recent or the newest reports. So that's what I've got for those, Mitch. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. That was great. So if anyone else is interested in setting up email alerts so that you can stay up to date on recent observations to the database for species and locations that you work in or are interested in, I'll do a brief run through of how to set up an email alert. So, of course, you would be logged into iMapInvasives, and in the main menu, underneath your account, there's a section called Email Alerts. So if you click on that, it'll bring you to your Email Alerts page. So I have some set up. For instance, I have some set up just for a couple of species that I'm interested in. So there's the general alerts at the top. So you can opt in and out of these. Most of these pertain to records that you have created, whether or not you want updates on what happens with those records. But the main thing I'll discuss is these custom alerts. So this is where you can set up really specific alerts so that you can get emails with the records that you're most interested in. So rather than having to search through the database and find the records, this will kind of do all of that work, find the records for you, and deliver them to you. So I'll click Add Edit Alerts at the top right. And now an Add Alert button has popped up. It's kind of similar to when you were adding an organization on the account page. So add an alert. The first thing you can do is set up an alert name. So this will show up in your email subject to make it really clear and easy to use. For example, I saw on Nicole's slide that her Tier 1 alert was titled something like Tier 1 species. So when she gets the alert, it's very easy to tell what records are being collected in that email. So I will do an alert for terrestrial plants in Saratoga County, just to show you how things work. And you can set up a frequency. These are digest emails. So if you want an individual alert every time a terrestrial plant, in this case, a terrestrial plant is submitted in Saratoga County, you could do immediate. I'm going to pick a weekly, and I'll pick a time that I know I will be able to go through the alert. So I'll pick Friday mornings are good for me. You can choose whatever time works for you. This means every Friday at 9 a.m. I'll get an email that collects records according to parameters that I'll set up in this criteria section. Many of you will only have this confirmed records option. For those of you who have both options, you should carefully consider which you want to choose. So for example, Nicole had new/modified, including unconfirmed for her tier species alerts, because she wants to see any reports, even if they haven't been confirmed yet, because she may be the person to confirm them. But for her horizon scanning, so the southern counties neighboring Capital Region PRISM, she only looked at the confirmed records because she only needed to see the records that had already been reviewed. Again, if you want to be able to confirm records, you can email us. And for this record, I'll include, for this alert, I'll include unconfirmed. And so there are a couple options for the criteria you set up. So by default, it's just any species, so it would be all records. If you do species name, you could type in species names. This is what Nicole did for the Tier 1 species. This is not a Tier 1 species, but it's just the first species that popped up in my mind. So you could do knotweed to get the knotweed species, for example. And you would click on one to have that be the criteria. But I said I would do species, I said I would do terrestrial plants. So I'm going to go to species type, and then I'll select plants from type and terrestrial from habitat type. And then the last thing is location. So I could leave it as is right now, but it would be for the entire database. But I'm going to hone it down into just an area just to one key area rather than the entire database. So there are a couple options. You could do first time in county district. This would return all of any terrestrial plant that is reported for the first time in a county. You could also do radius from point. I think most commonly people use the geography types. That's what I'll show. So you pick which geography you want to filter your report on. So you could do state and choose New York. You could select a specific water body, conservation lands. You could do local municipal boundaries. These regional management partnerships, those are the PRISMs in New York State. But for my example, I will do county/district. So you select jurisdiction, so that's New York. And I'm going to select Saratoga from that list. And if you're also interested in the records nearby, you could add in a buffer. So I'll do a buffer of 5 miles. And then, so it's all set up. But what you have to do is go up and save your new alert. So you scroll back up to the top and click the Save button. And then you will have a new alert. I won't save it for now just because this is just an alert for educational purposes. So that's what I wanted to show on the alerts. And now we can move on to reports. So the reporting tool is something that Megan Harris has utilized in the Finger Lakes PRISM. So we'll hear from her on how she's used that.
Hello, everyone. Like Mitch said, my name is Megan Harris. I work for the Finger Lakes PRISM as an aquatic invasive species program coordinator. Obviously, being a part of a PRISM, one of the biggest things is that first P stands for partnership. So we have a lot of partners throughout the region, lake association, soil water conservation districts that are interested in what's going on in their respective water bodies. So this graph shows this graph was included on the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Association report for the Watercraft Steward Program. So for the Watercraft Steward Program, one of the things that we ask all the boaters going in and out of the water is where the last water body that their boat was in, and then if they're coming out of the water, where they're going next. Obviously for the Lake Association, they're mostly concerned with where people are coming from and the kind of threats that that poses to their water body. So this graph shows the most common previous water body for Canandaigua Lake, but the reports allowed us to take that information one step further by letting them know which water bodies contain species that are not already in Canandaigua Lake. So they would pose more of a threat. The ones with the patterns would be those. As you can see on the right, this is my report that I did for iMap. I created a custom area around Irondequoit Bay and was quickly able to figure out that the species that have been confirmed, reported and confirmed in Irondequoit are all already present in Canandaigua Lake, which is unfortunate, but it's fortunate in the fact that it doesn't pose a huge threat if people were just in that water body coming to Canandaigua. You're also able to use the report to specify or to choose by geography. So you can choose each water body specifically. However, I chose not to do that in this example. Well, actually it wasn't an option for this example. Bays, the St. Lawrence River, water bodies with less clear boundaries don't have a geography option in there. So, but I just drew the custom area, which took maybe like 20 extra seconds. So it was super easy and very helpful. I also was able to use the reporting tool just the other day. We had some people reach out to us from Bingham University that were interested in getting involved, helping reporting invasive species before the semester ends, so in April. Obviously, that's a difficult time since a lot of stuff hasn't started popping out of the ground yet. So I was able to hop onto iMap and look at reports for filtering for April for the last few years and found a couple of species that I was able to send their way to be on the lookout for before the semester ends. But yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll throw my email in the chat box.
Thank you, Megan. So now I will briefly show you how you can do this reporting stuff, where you can find the report tool on iMap. So when you are logged in, there is a tool called Export Report on the top right. And this tool can actually respond to filters like Megan said. So I'll set, for example purposes, let me see how I want to do this. Yeah, I'll start back a little bit further. So there are, to use the Export Report tool, you click on Export Report, and to use the reports, you toggle over to Report. And there are several different options. So species list by geography is one of the most widely usable ones, and that's what Megan was using. So you can get a list of species reported within a certain geography. So if you want to know what species are known in your county, you can do a species list by geography report and get all the species in your county. There's also the infested area report. So that would use the polygon records and calculate the total area for a species that you select. Very similar is the area treated, except that would be running on the treatment polygons to generate a summary that adds up all of the polygons in a certain area. And then finally, there's the approaching region report. This is a pretty cool report where you can see what species have not been reported in your area, but they've been reported nearby. So that's the one that I'm going to run through for this demonstration. And the scenario I'm going to use is that I want to know what terrestrial plants are in Saratoga County, that are not in Saratoga County, but have been reported nearby. So essentially, species to look out for this season, or maybe species that are underreported in my area that I should report. So first, I'm going to filter the map on terrestrial plants. So I'll get rid of my Tree of Heaven filter, and I will go to habitat type and do terrestrial, and then kingdom. I will do plants. Right, and that looks good. So I'll apply that filter. And once you're done, you can either minimize or exit out. And it might take a second for that filter to apply, but I'll just move on. So you go to the Export Report tool at the top. Oh, one thing that I always forget is that the report runs on the layers that you have turned on. So for example, if you wanted to know what species had been, if you wanted to include unconfirmed species in this report, you would have to actually toggle that layer on. So I'll toggle that layer on, and for this, I wouldn't really need any of the other layers. If you're using the species list by geography, you could actually include not detected to see what species had not been detected, or what species for which a not detected record has been entered. But I'll do confirmed and unconfirmed, and I'll do the approaching region report. So you can give the report a name. So I'm doing terrestrial plants in Saratoga County. And one of the first options you have is to define or select your boundary area. So if you click on that, you have two options. You can draw on the map, or you can choose an existing geography. So for example, if I wanted to do Lake George, I could probably use existing geography, and I could click on Lake George. If I wanted to do a river or a bay like Megan was doing, if it's not in our list of geographies, you can just draw a polygon. But I'm going to use an existing geography, so I'm doing a county, and so you select geography type. So you can choose from the same geographies in the email alerts. States, provinces, water bodies, local municipalities, prisms. I'm going to choose county, and it tells you to click on the map and select a county/district. So those county boundaries have just popped up. So I'm going to click on Saratoga County, which is up here. And so it selects that. For some reports, you might want a buffer. For this one, I don't, because I want to see what I want to use that Saratoga County boundary, because I want to see what has been reported nearby but not within it. So I'm just going to hit next. I'm going to leave this set. So ignore filter no means that it will apply the filter. And I want to only see the terrestrial plants, so I'll leave that as is. And then you can set up the search distance here. So let's say you could choose 5 kilometers. For the really nearby species, you could choose something like 20 kilometers or even 50 kilometers if you want to see anything in the broader region. And then you just run the report. And this is a pretty powerful tool that's running some complicated GIS analyses just at the click of a button, so it does take a minute to load. So I just preloaded one up. Some of the more simpler reports don't take as long to load as this one. So once it loads, it'll give you this message. Then you click Report in New View Report in New tab, and then you have a report. So this is a table of all of the species that have been reported within 20 kilometers of the Saratoga County boundary, but not found within Saratoga County. So some of these might be nearby species that could invade Saratoga County. Some might be species that are just underreported. But this is a useful thing for developing a quick watch list for an area. And so you can copy and paste the table into an Excel spreadsheet if you want to save it, or you can print this to a PDF. And that is all I wanted to show for the reports. So with that, I thank everyone for joining us. I thank our presenters for sharing how they've been using iMapInvasives in their PRISMs. So if anyone has any questions, you can enter those now. And as you think of any questions you may have, I'll mention that our next monthly webinar is April 28th. It's titled the NY Invasive Species Tier List, using the online tier table to prioritize your invasive species management. So this relates to those species tiers that Nicole was talking about earlier, and we'll be hearing from Dylan Finley on a table he's been working on where you can view the results of the species tier analysis. One thing that I kind of like set myself up for it, but forgot to actually drive the point. So I was mentioning earlier that the URL is dynamic. So as you filter in, or as you filter on a species, and so right now I'm filtered on terrestrial invasive plants, and as I zoom in and change base maps and all that sort of stuff, the URL changes. So if you wanted to show your partners where a certain species is on the map or something, you can just filter to that species in iMap and then send them the link. If you are just showing confirmed records, then the people won't even have to log in. If you're showing them not detected or something that is only available when you log in, then that person would just need to click the link and log in. So that trick has come in handy a lot of times for us so far, and I think it could also be useful for many people on this call.